I'm Rachel, 31 years old, 7 months pregnant with my first baby, and I need someone outside my family to tell me if I'm the jerk here, because right now my mother isn't speaking to me and my older sister thinks I ruined her life. Let me back up. My sister Vanessa is 35, married to a guy named Marcus, and she has 3 kids under 8. She's been a stay-at-home mom since her oldest was born, and for the last 8 years, I have been her unofficial, unpaid backup childcare. Every emergency, every date night, I just need 2 hours to myself, the answer was always Rachel. I live 20 minutes away. I work from home as a graphic designer, and apparently that made me the family's on-call nanny. I didn't mind at first. I love my niece and nephews. But it stopped being occasional favors and became an expectation. Vanessa would text me at 7 a.m. saying she was dropping the kids off at 9, not asking, telling. If I said I had client deadlines, my mother would call and remind me that family comes first and that Vanessa sacrificed her whole career to raise those kids, so the least I could do was help. I want to be clear, I never once got paid for this. Not gas money, not a thank you dinner, nothing. Meanwhile, Vanessa posts constantly on social media about being a girl mom and a boy mom and how blessed she is, with captions about how she does it all herself. When I got pregnant, I honestly thought things might shift. Maybe Vanessa would understand what I'd been doing for her all these years once she saw me going through it myself. I was wrong. My baby shower was 3 weeks ago. My mother-in-law hosted it, my best friend planned the games, and about 40 people came. Vanessa showed up late with all 3 kids in tow, which nobody had asked her to bring since there was a sitter available at the venue that my mother-in-law had arranged and paid for. Everything was fine until the gift opening. I opened Vanessa's gift, a second-hand baby monitor, still in its original box from when her youngest was born, clearly regifted. I said thank you anyway, I wasn't going to make a scene over a gift. Then Vanessa stood up, in front of everyone, and said she wanted to say something real quick. She said, and I am quoting this as close as I can remember, that she wanted everyone to know that unlike some people, she gave up her whole career and her whole life for her kids, and that Rachel was about to learn what real sacrifice looked like instead of just playing house with her design job from a laptop. The room went dead silent. My mother-in-law's jaw actually dropped. A few of my friends looked at me like, is this really happening right now? I asked her to sit down. She didn't. She kept going, saying something about how I better not expect her to help me the way she'd helped me, because she'd already done enough hard mom stuff for one family. I want everyone to understand, I have never once asked Vanessa to babysit for me. Not once. She was talking about a favor that hadn't even happened yet, in the middle of my own baby shower, to humiliate me for a job I love. My mother, who was sitting 3 feet away, said nothing. Not a word in my defense. I left the room to cry in the bathroom for 10 minutes while my best friend covered for me and got the games moving again. That night, lying in bed, I told my husband Tyler I was done. Not done with my sister completely, but done being her free babysitting service. Whatever help I'd given her before, that was over. I had no idea how big of a fight that decision was about to start. Would you have called your sister out on the spot or waited like I did? Drop your take below, ATA. To understand why that baby shower moment hit so hard, you need to know the full history, because this didn't start 8 years ago. It started when we were kids. Vanessa is 4 years older than me, and growing up, she was always the golden child. She was the pretty one, the popular one, the one my mother bragged about at church. I was the quiet one who liked drawing and didn't cause trouble, so I sort of got overlooked by default. When Vanessa got married at 24, my parents paid for almost the entire wedding, over $30,000, money they told me later they simply didn't have for my education, which is why I worked 2 jobs through community college. When Vanessa had her first baby, my mother moved in with her for 6 weeks to help. When I had a bad flare-up of a stomach condition 2 years ago and needed someone to drive me to appointments for a month, my mother said she was too busy with the grandkids. I'm not saying this to sound bitter for no reason. I'm laying it out because it explains the pattern. In my family, Vanessa's needs were emergencies. My needs were inconveniences. So when Vanessa started using me as backup childcare, it fit right into that old pattern, and I just slid into the role without questioning it, because questioning it had never worked before. The breaking point actually built slowly over the last year. Vanessa's husband Marcus travels for work, and she started leaning on me more and more. There was a stretch last spring where I had the kids 4 times in 3 weeks. One of those times, I had a client presentation the next morning and told her I genuinely could not do it. She showed up anyway, dropped the kids at my door with a diaper bag, said, "You'll figure it out," and drove off before I could even respond. I called my mother in tears that night. My mother's response was, "Vanessa has 3 kids and no help. You have to be more understanding." I remember thinking, more understanding than what exactly? I don't have kids yet. I have a job with real deadlines. I have a body that was, at the time, going through fertility treatments Tyler, and I hadn't told anyone about because we didn't want the extra pressure or opinions. Nobody in my family knew we'd been trying for almost 2 years, or how many losses we'd quietly gone through before this pregnancy finally stuck. Vanessa didn't know that every time she dumped her kids on me at the last minute, she was doing it to someone who was privately grieving and terrified it would never happen for her. When I finally did get pregnant, I was so relieved and so scared of jinxing it that I didn't tell my family until I was almost 4 months along. Vanessa's reaction when I finally shared it at a family dinner was to immediately start talking about how hard the first trimester was for her for almost 10 straight minutes before anyone even asked how I was feeling. My husband Tyler noticed the pattern before I fully let myself see it. He used to say, "Watching Vanessa is like watching someone who can only be the main character. If attention shifts away from her for more than a few minutes, she finds a way to pull it back." Looking back now, the baby shower wasn't really about babysitting at all. It was about Vanessa realizing that for the first time in our lives, an event was fully about me, and she couldn't stand it. Have you ever noticed a golden child pattern in your own family? Tell me in the comments, ATA. After the baby shower, I didn't say anything to Vanessa directly for almost a week. I needed to cool off before I said something I couldn't take back. Tyler and I talked it through, and we agreed on one thing. Once the baby came, I was not going to be available as backup childcare for Vanessa's kids anymore, at least not for the foreseeable future. I had my own newborn to take care of, and frankly, after that stunt at my shower, I didn't feel like I owed her any more favors, past, present, or future. I texted Vanessa a simple message. I said I loved her, I loved my niece and nephews, but going forward I wasn't going to be available for last minute or regular babysitting once the baby arrived, and I hoped she understood. Her response came almost instantly. She sent back 3 paragraphs, saying I was being petty over one comment, that I was choosing to hold a grudge instead of being a good sister, and that when I actually became a mother I would understand how hard it was and regret how I was treating her now. I didn't respond to that message. I just left her on read for 2 days, which apparently was a crime worse than the original comment, because that's when my mother got involved. My mother called me on a Sunday afternoon. She didn't ask how I was feeling or how the pregnancy was going. She opened with, "Your sister is devastated. What did you say to her?" I explained calmly what had happened at the shower and what I'd decided going forward. My mother's response was that Vanessa didn't mean it that way, that I was too sensitive, and that family doesn't keep score. That phrase, "family doesn't keep score," is something I'd heard my whole life, always aimed at me whenever I brought up an imbalance. Funny how nobody ever said that to Vanessa when she was the one adding things up. I told my mother, calmly, that I wasn't punishing anyone, I was simply setting a boundary for my own new family. My mother said, and I remember this word for word, "You're really going to abandon your sister right when she needs you most, over your own feelings?" I asked her, needs you most for what exactly? Vanessa has a husband. She has in-laws 40 minutes away who have never once been asked to help, as far as I know. She has friends from her mommy group who post about doing childcare swaps with each other. I was never the only option. I was just the option that never said no. My mother didn't have an answer for that. She just repeated that I was being selfish and hung up. 2 days later, my aunt texted me, clearly relaying something from my mother, asking if I was really cutting off my sister over a joke at a party. That's when I realized the story had already been rewritten in the family group chat. It wasn't Vanessa humiliated Rachel at her own baby shower anymore. It was Rachel is punishing Vanessa and abandoning her. I stayed quiet. I didn't correct anyone. I figured if people wanted to believe the version where I was the villain, nothing I said in a text was going to change that. What I didn't expect was what happened 3 weeks later, when Marcus, Vanessa's husband, suddenly left town for what she told everyone was an emergency work trip. Do you think I should have explained my side to the family group chat or stayed quiet like I did? Let me know, ATA. Marcus's emergency work trip turned out to be something else entirely, and it's the part of this story that changed how I understood the whole situation. About 4 days after he left, Vanessa showed up at my house unannounced, mascara smeared down her face, all 3 kids in the back of her minivan. I let her in because, pregnant or not, boundary or not, I wasn't going to leave my sister crying on my porch. She told me Marcus hadn't gone on a work trip at all. He had moved out. He'd told her 2 weeks earlier that he wanted a separation, that he felt like he'd become a stranger in his own marriage, that Vanessa was so consumed with presenting a perfect family online that she'd stopped actually being present with him, or, honestly, with the kids when the phone wasn't recording. Vanessa admitted, through sobs, that Marcus had told her she leaned on everyone around her, her mother, me, her mommy group, anyone, rather than actually building a partnership with him. Because it was easier to perform motherhood for an audience than to sit with him and work through their problems as a team. I sat with that for a minute. It didn't excuse what Marcus did. Leaving without more communication is its own issue, but it did explain a lot about the family dynamic I'd been living inside for years. Vanessa wasn't just leaning on me out of convenience. She'd built her entire identity around being seen as the perfect, hard-working mom, and the actual hard, unglamorous work of maintaining her marriage had gotten pushed aside in favor of the performance. Here's where it gets complicated. Vanessa asked me, right there in my kitchen, if I could take the kids for a few days while she figured things out. Old me would have said yes immediately. Pregnant me, 7 months along, still recovering from the emotional bruising of the baby shower, said no. I told her I was so sorry about Marcus, that I genuinely was, but I couldn't take 3 kids for multiple days while I was this far along and still working full-time. I offered instead to help her find actual resources, a family therapist, maybe reaching out to Marcus's parents, or even paying for a few days of professional childcare so she could breathe and make calls she needed to make. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. She said, "So this is really it, you're really not going to help me even now." I said, gently as I could, that I had been helping her for 8 years, and that helping didn't have to mean physically taking her kids anymore. I could help her find better, more sustainable support instead of being the one person who always said yes no matter the cost to me. She left angry. She told my mother I'd turned her away in her darkest moment. My mother called me that night, furious, saying she couldn't believe I would turn away a sister whose marriage was falling apart. I finally said what I'd been holding back for weeks. I asked my mother why, in 20 years, nobody in this family had ever once asked what I needed, not during my fertility struggles, not during my own health issues, not now during my own pregnancy. But somehow I was expected to drop everything the one time Vanessa's life got hard, when she had never once returned the favor. My mother went quiet on the phone for the first time in this entire situation. If you were me, would you have taken the kids in that moment, or held the boundary? Comment below, ATA. It's been 3 weeks since that phone call, and things have shifted in a way I honestly didn't expect. After I hung up with my mother that night, I didn't hear from anyone in the family for 4 days. Then my mother called again, and this time her tone was completely different. She told me she'd been thinking about what I said, and that she'd gone back and actually looked at old texts and photos, all the times I'd shown up for Vanessa without being asked twice, all the times I'd been told to be understanding while nobody extended that same understanding to me. She said she felt sick realizing how one-sided it had been, and how long she'd let it go on without questioning it. She apologized, genuinely, for not defending me at the baby shower, and for the family doesn't keep score comment, admitting that in our family, score had always been kept, just never in my favor. Vanessa and I still haven't fully repaired things. She's staying with our aunt right now with the kids while she and Marcus work through counseling, and from what I hear, it's actually helping. My mother told me Vanessa has started seeing a therapist on her own too, separate from the marriage counseling, which honestly might be the most important part of all of this. I sent Vanessa a message last week, not about babysitting, just checking in as her sister, asking how she was really doing. She responded, shorter than her usual paragraphs, saying she was struggling but trying, and that she was sorry for the shower, that she'd been jealous and scared and took it out on me in the worst possible way. It wasn't a perfect apology. There was no mention of the 8 years of one-sided favors, no acknowledgement of the pattern beyond that one incident. But it was more honesty than I'd gotten from her in a long time, and for now, I'm choosing to take it as a starting point rather than the finish line. As for me, I'm 1 month away from my due date. I've spent this pregnancy learning that protecting my peace isn't the same as abandoning my family, no matter how many times I was told otherwise growing up. I'm not planning to go back to being the default babysitter once this baby arrives. If Vanessa and I rebuild our relationship, and I hope we do, it's going to look different this time, with actual boundaries, actual reciprocity, and a lot less performing for an audience, online or otherwise. My mother, of all people, has become one of my biggest supporters through this. She told me last week that watching me hold my ground taught her something about the family patterns she'd spent decades not questioning, and that she wants to do better, for both her daughters, going forward. I still don't know if everyone in my extended family agrees with how I handled things. Some relatives still think I was too harsh. But I know that for the first time in my adult life, I didn't shrink myself down to keep the peace, and I don't regret it. So, tell me honestly, was I the jerk for finally setting that boundary, or was it long overdue? Let me know in the comments below.